Imagine getting that call. You know, the one every parent dreads.
Oh, yeah.
Your daughter, she's off backpacking, retracing your own adventure from years ago.
Right.
And then silence. Nothing.
It's chilling.
That's the horrible reality for Grace Millane's parents.
It's absolutely just awful.
22 years old, British backpacker, vanishes in New Zealand.
A story that really gets to you, because it's every parent's worst fear.
Exactly. And that's what we're diving into today. The chilling murder of Grace Millane, based on that podcast episode you sent.
Yeah, this one really grabs you right from the start.
So picture this. Grace is on this 6-month backpacking trip, classic gap year after South America, then New Zealand, even hitting some of the same spots her mother did decades earlier.
Wow, that makes it even more.
I know, right? And at first, everything's perfect, picture perfect.
That's what's so eerie, right? You see this young woman, so full of life, texting, posting on social media.
It's that contrast, that sudden shift that makes it so unsettling.
You think that could be anyone's child.
And that's where it takes that dark turn. Grace arrives in Auckland just before her 22nd birthday.
Okay.
She's using Tinder, meeting people like many travelers do.
Sure.
She tells her best friend about this date. Guy claims he's an oil company manager. Even texts during the date, saying things are going well.
And then
Nothing.
Oh, wow. That's just, your heart sinks just hearing that.
It's like the air gets sucked out of the room. Her birthday passes. No replies. The worry just skyrockets.
Makes sense.
Her family, they're frantic. File a missing persons report. Her father flies to New Zealand to help search.
Can you imagine as a parent?
I can't even fathom it, that feeling of helplessness.
And the police, they start digging into her last moves, CCTV footage, public leads, the whole 9 yards.
Right, trying to piece together the puzzle.
And it's like piece by piece, this unsettling picture starts forming.
What do they find?
Her belongings at the hostel, untouched. Her itinerary altered without a word to anyone.
Red flags all over the place.
Yeah, this isn't just a carefree backpacker going off the grid.
And their focus quickly shifts to this 26-year-old Jesse Kempson.
Ah, the oil company manager.
Yeah, turns out complete fabrication.
Figures.
So they arrest him, CCTV footage, inconsistencies in his story, forensic evidence. It all points to him.
At his hotel. Right.
Yep. And then it gets even worse. They discover Grace's body, stuffed in a suitcase, hidden on a remote road in the Wateker Ranges.
Oh, God, that's just, I can't even.
Hiking area outside Auckland, popular spot.
And the public reaction.
It's huge. Shockwaves, vigils. The Prime Minister even issues an apology. This outpouring of grief, support for the family, but it doesn't bring Grace back.
No, of course not.
And it leaves everyone asking, who is this Jesse Kempson? What could drive someone to do something so horrific?
That's the million-dollar question, right?
Right.
And as the podcast delves into his past, it's like peeling back layers of a nightmare.
So lay it on us, what do we learn about Kempson?
Well, let's just say a deeply disturbing picture starts to emerge.
It's like what? Give us the details.
Dishonesty, instability, rocky family relationships. Former roommates describe him as erratic, even threatening.
Oh, that's not good.
And then it gets even worse. A pattern of violence against women starts surfacing.
Wait, what? This wasn't a one-off.
It seems not. His ex-girlfriend reported him for rape, death threats. Another woman accused him of sexual assault.
It's like he was a ticking time bomb.
And it makes you think, how many others are out there using these apps, hiding behind fake profiles?
It's terrifying, the thought that someone like that could be just a swipe away.
And it raises serious questions about safety on these platforms. How do we protect people, especially when they're traveling?
Right, it's like a whole other layer of vulnerability.
Exactly. But, it also underscores how important it is to listen to survivors, believe them when they come forward.
Because they're often ignored, dismissed.
Exactly. And that can have devastating consequences.
So what happens when they confront Kempson? Does he crack?
At first, he plays it cool, denies everything, says Grace left his apartment after their date.
But the police, they're not buying it, right?
Nope, they've got him dead to rights, evidence piling up.
And this is where the digital trail comes in, right?
Yeah.
All those internet searches.
Oh, yeah. Crucial piece of the puzzle. He's frantically searching stuff about the Waiteker Ranges after Grace disappears.
Like what?
Hottest fire, flesh-eating birds in the area, trying to figure out how to make a body disappear without a trace.
Just like something out of a horror movie.
Chilling, isn't it? And then the evidence in his apartment seals the deal.
What did they find?
Bloodstains, cleaning supplies, and the most disturbing thing, intimate photos of Grace's body taken hours after her death.
He took pictures.
Yeah, it's sickening. He tries to spin it as some consensual BDSM thing, but it's clear that's a lie.
That rough sex gone wrong defense, it makes me furious.
It's a tactic we see far too often, trying to shift the blame onto the victim like it was her fault somehow.
We've got to dig into that more, but I think we need to pause here for a sec, let this all sink in for our listeners.
Yeah, it's a lot to process. We'll pick up right where we left off in part 2. So we left off talking about that rough sex gone wrong defense. Tough stuff.
Yeah, using Grace's interest in BDSM to somehow, I don't know, imply she was asking for it, it's just enraging.
It's sadly common. You see it in so many cases involving violence against women.
So they're saying because she was into that, her life was somehow less valuable.
Exactly. This dangerous idea that certain sexual practices make someone more vulnerable, less deserving of protection.
Like they consented to the violence because of their interests.
Right. And even worse, this defense sometimes works. Perpetrators avoid serious consequences by claiming it was an accident during rough sex.
It just makes you sick, thinking they could get away with it.
That's why understanding the legal side of this is crucial. The difference between murder and manslaughter, for example.
Okay, break that down for me. What's the distinction?
Well, murder, the prosecution has to prove intent to kill. Manslaughter, it's more about proving recklessness, negligence, causing death without that specific intent.
So they're saying Kimson might have caused her death, but he didn't mean to. It was a tragic accident during a consensual act.
Exactly. And to back that up, they use evidence from Grace's laptop, witnesses talking about her BDSM interests.
Trying to convince the jury her death was unintentional. Just a tragic outcome of her lifestyle.
It's manipulative, taking something private, twisting it to fit their narrative, and Grace isn't even here to defend herself.
It's just wrong. Morally and ethically, should someone's sexual history even be allowed in a murder trial?
Right, where do we draw the line? Is it even relevant to whether he intended to kill her?
It feels more like a distraction, an attempt to shame her. To me, it's completely irrelevant.
There's a big movement against this defense. Some want to restrict it, even abolish it completely.
Makes sense. It lets perpetrators off the hook, perpetuates victim blaming.
And it goes beyond the courtroom, creates fear for survivors, makes them less likely to report abuse.
And it shapes public perception, makes people more likely to blame the victim.
Exactly, a dangerous ripple effect.
So back to the trial. Did this rough sex strategy work on the jury?
Thankfully, no. The prosecution did a brilliant job presenting evidence showing the holes in Kempson's story.
What about those other women, the ones who'd encountered him on Tinder?
They were crucial. 3 of them testified about his aggressive behavior, the choking, disregarding their consent.
Wow, that must have been tough for them.
Incredibly brave, and it established a pattern, contradicted that consensual image the defense was trying to build.
So the jury saw through the lies. What was the verdict?
Guilty of murder, life sentence, minimum 17 years before parole.
And those other sexual assault cases.
He was convicted later, another 11 years on top of the life sentence.
Justice served, in a legal sense, but it doesn't erase the pain for Grace's family.
No amount of punishment can bring her back, but at least he's being held accountable.
And Grace's case had a huge impact. Sparked national conversations in New Zealand about women's safety.
Absolutely, especially for female tourists, it forced them to reevaluate the legal system, the whole issue of violence against women.
So what concrete actions came out of this? Did anything change?
Well, a lot of initiatives were launched, raising awareness about personal safety, support for victims.
That's the start.
And there's been a push to reform that rough sex defense. Some even want to create a new offense, sexual violence resulting in death.
So you wouldn't need to prove intent in those cases.
Exactly. Makes it harder for perpetrators to hide behind that excuse.
Sounds like there's some real momentum building.
It's encouraging, but legal reforms take time. No guarantee it'll happen. Needs continued pressure from the public, lawmakers, everyone.
Grace's case really exposed a huge problem.
And it's not limited to New Zealand. This defense is used worldwide. It's a global conversation we need to have. Consent, accountability, how legal systems fail to protect victims.
This deep dive has been a real eye-opener. The legal stuff, victim blaming, the fight for change, it's all connected.
It's a heavy story, but it sticks with you, makes you think.
It also highlights the positive developments, the awareness, activism, the hope for real change.
Absolutely. Grace's legacy lives on in those fighting to prevent future tragedies, empowering women to travel safely.
It shows that even in darkness, there's light, resilience, the power of collective action.
Beautifully put. It's a call to action for everyone.
We need to pause here again give our listeners a moment to digest all this. We'll be right back to wrap up this deep dive. Picking up where we left off, it's hard to ignore the impact Grace's case has had on, travel, especially for women.
Right, especially solo female travelers using dating apps. It's really highlighted those dangers.
Makes you think, did Grace, maybe she felt safer because, well, New Zealand, it has that image, right?
Oh, absolutely. That safe haven perception could definitely make you lower your guard.
It's tragic, reminds us that you got to stay vigilant no matter where you are.
Exactly. And that's especially true with online dating while traveling. It's a whole other level of risk.
So practical tips, what can women do to stay safe when they're using these apps abroad?
Well, first off, always meet in public, at least for the first few dates. Don't go straight to private places.
Smart. Don't give away too much info too soon.
And definitely tell someone your plans. A friend, family, someone you trust. Where you're going, who you're meeting, when you'll be back.
Like a safety net, just in case.
Exactly. And honestly, the most important thing, trust your gut. If something feels off, get out of there, no matter how awkward it might seem.
Better safe than sorry, always.
Always. And it's not just physical safety, it's also about mental preparedness, knowing the risks, having a plan.
Because online dating, it's not all sunshine and roses, unfortunately.
Right, you have to be aware not everyone's who they say they are. Danger can lurk even behind a charming profile.
It's about being smart, cautious, setting boundaries, not just about picking the right date.
And if the worst happens, if someone finds themselves in danger, remember, you're not alone. There are resources, organizations like Rape Crisis, Victim Support, helplines. They're there to help.
It's so important to know that support is out there.
Absolutely. Reach out. Don't suffer in silence.
Shifting gears a bit, I'm curious about the impact on tourism in New Zealand. Did Grace's case change anything?
Oh, it definitely forced them to take a hard look in the mirror. More focus on educating tourists about safety, providing better resources for victims.
Good, it's a start.
They're working on it, making sure visitors feel safe, but it's a long road. Always more that can be done.
It's a wake-up call, really, for everyone involved.
Absolutely. Got to keep the conversation going, find solutions that protect everyone, visitors and locals alike.
Wrapping up this deep dive, it's such a complex case. It's about tragedy, loss, the worst of humanity, but also there's this element of, hope, resilience, the power of collective action.
It's like even in this darkness, there's light. Grace's legacy lives on in those fighting for change, empowering women, making the world safer.
It shows us we can all make a difference. Being vigilant, speaking out, supporting those organizations, it all adds up.
It's a call to action, loud and clear.
And on that note, we've reached the end of our deep dive, heavy stuff, emotionally draining, but so important to talk about.
Thanks for joining us. Hope this sparks some reflection, personal safety, legal complexities, and the power we all have to create a better world.
And thank you for lending your expertise. Until next time, stay curious, stay engaged, and most importantly, stay safe out there.